You are listening to ESG News and Views from the Conference Board.
Hi, this is Jeff Hoffman, Institute Leader of the Corporate Citizenship and Philanthropy here at the Conference Board's ESG Center. The ESG Center focuses on corporate citizenship, sustainability, and corporate governance. Welcome to this episode of ESG News and Views. The novel coronavirus has now reached the very grim milestone, passing more than 10 million cases around the world. Half of the world's cases have been in the U.S. and Europe, but COVID-19 is now rapidly growing in the Americas. The virus is also continuing to affect South Asia and Africa, where it is not expected to peak until the end of July. This episode of ESG News and Views is the second in our special four-part series exploring how companies are responding to COVID-19 in the emerging markets of Africa, Latin America, India, and the Middle East, and particularly through the lens of corporate citizenship and philanthropy. Today we are focusing on how the crisis is affecting Latin America. I'm delighted to be joined by two guests, Sandro Mesquita, who is Vice President of Corporate Citizenship and Sustainability for Latin America for AT&T, and Maria Luiza de Oliveira, Pinto, Paiva, I just call her Malu, who is the Director of Sustainability for Suzano. Welcome both. Before we dive in, I'd love to do a quick introduction for our listeners. Can you tell us about your roles, where you are covering the areas of your responsibility in the world that you oversee for corporate citizenship for your respective companies? Malu, why don't we start with you?
Okay, Malu Paiva. I'm working at Suzano. Suzano is a Brazilian company, a pulp market global leader, and also leader in Latin America for paper production. We have all our operations based in Brazil. I have been within the company for 5 years now. I'm in charge of sustainability from its incorporation in all, let's say, corporate areas within the company, as well responsible for all the social and environmental operations.
Great. Thank you, Malu. Sandro.
Yes. Hello, Jeff. Good afternoon. Hello, Malu. Great to be with you here. I'm Sandro Mesquita. I head all the AT&T work for CSR and environmental sustainability in Latin America. And that is a region that covers pretty much everything south of the Rio Grande and the West Indies and Caribbean all the way down to South America. My headquarters is based out of New York City, where was the epicenter of, I guess, the COVID situation here in the United States. And I do have staff throughout the territory, and obviously with all the responsibilities that corporate social responsibility and sustainability partake, right, including community engagement, education, and obviously all the work in long sustainable renewable energy, et cetera, et cetera. So it's great to be here, Jeff.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate you both being here with us for this important conversation. So to start off with, what are you seeing in South America with the pandemic and the resulting economic crisis? Let's start with you, Sandro.
Well, there's several things that we're seeing that's going on in the region. First and foremost, and when we see that there is a rise, that to some it may be surprising, but to others not. But especially considering our countries in South America, where the winter is just really hitting now, although some experts now here in the United States even see that, well, it's not seasonal, because here in the United States there's also a rise. But definitely what we see is a lot less organization from some administrations and how to handle this crisis. And they may not be nationwide in some cases, but definitely in the high DMA areas. This is obviously impacting businesses everywhere, right? Where people play, where people work, where people worship. And these things obviously impact us, impact many organizations. And we also seen a rise in a lot of the different services, which has also been reflected here and in Europe as well. This obviously keeps us on our toes as CSR representatives, because how is it that we prepare for this situation. I mean, in other practices in other areas, I mean, perhaps not be so well prepared or actually well called to address the COVID-19 situation. But us as CSR, we're supposed to be the one in front and center in this situation. As you probably saw from the Johns Hopkins University update map, you talk about the top 15 countries in the world right now with cases. There's at least 7 that are in our region in Latin America. So really, it's a region that we are paying a lot of attention to and is impacting our business and our clients.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And Malu, what are you seeing in Brazil with the pandemic and the resulting economic crisis?
Well, I think first of all, the pandemic has exposed fragilities that already exists in our country. I think it's important to say that a lot of things that are happening now, we know them, we know the problems that we have regarding them for a long time. For instance, regarding health, there is a lack of basic services, not only a lack of ventilators that come to evidence now to the need of this equipment to treat COVID patients. But I mean, it's really critical, the situation of the health system here in Brazil. Beyond health, I can mention 2 other areas that are critical and have come to the forefront during the pandemic. Education is one of them, and the other one is the support to small entrepreneurs. Related to education, our public school, it was clear now, very clear, our public education system is not ready, does not have the necessary infrastructure to move to a more digital, virtual education, and everything that comes together to enable such movement. If we talk, for instance, about the small entrepreneurs, there is a lack of access, quick access to credit to run their business and now to face the current situation. And here, this is quite an important segment because they do generate a lot of jobs in Brazil. So I'm very much concerned about it. I think that what Brazil will face on the road is not too easy. We still have to increase a lot the efficiency of the Brazilian state. At the same time that, as I just mentioned, we have to build solutions for some basic societal needs. I think someone has already said that we are all under the same storm. It's true, Jeff, I do believe in it, but the difference between the boats that are facing their storms are very clear, and we can see it here in Brazil as well. Solutions to the issues of inequality is a must right now. It has always been in the agenda, but I think that the situation now is showing that, it's not possible in a world that we are so much interdependent that we don't do something that really works to leverage the level of quality of the life of everybody. Well, in this context, I do believe as a company that the private sector has a crucial role to play in the construction of the solutions that will contribute to the evolution, that the transformation of society. Here in Brazil, we see now during the pandemic the highest level of donations ever made by companies. Never in this country we had so many companies engaged to help to solve a problem. It's a short term in the sense that we have really to create the infrastructure to deal with the pandemic now. But it's amazing to see the engagement of companies in general. But I think that once the pandemic is over, if it's not over, I think that we will find a new way of life once we have the vaccine. But well, I think that the private sector will need businessmen, businesswomen that work not only for their company's P&L. They do have to work for their company's P&L, but at the same time, in a matter that generates social development, social and environmental value. The way we do business has to ensure that the way that we do business has to ensure that our businesses are not good only for us. Our business, it has to be good for everybody, for all. So I think one thing that we have learned is that the private sector can do a lot together, and together with government as well. And that together we were able to bring some good solutions for society, and that we cannot lose all this learning that we have conquered during the last 100 days here in Brazil.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yes, the last 100 days, the last 100-day storm, as you talked about it, we do have different boats around the world and how we're experiencing the same storm, but in different ways. It does sound like there's some silver linings that you're seeing with the highest number of companies engaging around the pandemic. So I think that is certainly positive there. And as you said, hopefully the learnings from this time will continue on. Before we jump back over, Malu, I'm wondering if you could just briefly tell us about how this is impacting your company specifically, and how this is impacting the employees of Suzano.
Well, learnings in this area as well. From a company perspective, we were considered an essential company to fight the pandemic right now. So the business has still to be run on a very agile, efficient way. We cannot fail with our clients because it means to fail with society. So in this sense, we are working very hard. We are about 14,000 employees. 11,000 works at the operational areas, being the fields, the forests, or our mills. The other 4,000, they work in administrative areas that were able to move to home office. So we have been dealing with two different realities. How to make sure that our employees that's still on the front are okay, that we are taking good care of them, that they are very conscious about all the prevention, the measurements that they have to have at the work and their houses with their families. At the same time that we have the home office group, where you have different types of issues on how you keep them motivated during this phase as well. When the EXCO met to define what we would do relate to the pandemic, we didn't imagine that the chosen strategy would serve as a leverage to increase the pride among our employees, because that's what's happening now, Jeff. It's amazing, and it's based on surveys that we have been running every month. The pride of our employees now is very, very high. And why I think it's happening? Well, I think the way that we organize it, the let's say the strategy to fight COVID-19 managed to be very, very well balanced. We have three pillars. First pillar is our people. So our employees, the ones that are at home or the ones that still in the operation. So a lot of measurement being take place on how to be more and more, our mills and our fields be more and more safe. A lot of investment, but I won't go through all of them. I just want to call attention to one thing that's making a lot of difference now. We are working with psychological support, not only to our employees, but to the family of our employees as well. And it made a lot of difference. So it's not only about how you have a transportation that's more safe than it used to be, how you deal with the food, how you have a distance between the employees, but it's also how you take care of their minds, their well-being, their hearts, and their families as well. Because it's not easy, we know, to leave your house in the morning to work during this pandemic. So we are putting a lot of efforts on it. Pillar one, people, our people. Second pillar is about society. And then we have two different groups to look at. First one, let's talk about the communities that are based around our mills and forests. Let's talk about the small the small towns that are around us. We have already a lot of programs in place with them. We have a very long relationship. We stay, once we are in a region, we stay for a long time there. And we have been investing for more than 10 years in programs of income generation and education. And what we did at this moment, we started to look at the pandemic as an opportunity for them in terms of income generation to come to even better programs. And the same in education, we have to help our education secretaries at municipality level on how to move to this digital world. But I can talk about it more later. And the third pillar, it's about our business, how to run our business on a very efficient and agile way now. So it's important to remember, Suzano is a new company. We have 18 months. We were born 18 months ago. So we are still going through the consolidation of this new culture. And everybody knows that you don't consolidate a culture in 18 months. You need at least 2 to 3 years. But I must say that the pandemics reinforce our cultural drivers that were set in the very beginning of our company. And that now, during this crisis, our employees, they are looking at us and they are saying that we are really trying to transform and to inspire change in society. It's one of our drivers. They also see that through all these programs towards the society, communities, we are seeking to generate and share value with them. And what we are doing is because we think that's good not only for us, it's good for everybody. Those are the three cultural pillars, let's say. And what they are telling us now, and as I said, we have surveys going on, is that it makes sense for the company. What was to be a vision, the culture that we want to have, the company that we want to be, they realize now that it makes sense to be like that, and they enjoy to be part of the company. And they see that we are actually trying to walk the talk. So for us, in this context, the pandemic helped us, I think, to speed up the cultural consolidation within the company. It does not mean that we are ready, that we are not making mistakes. We make a lot, but I think that we were able to, as a group, the whole group, all the employees, they are feeling really as we belong to a company that is making something that's good, in making something that makes sense, and it's more and more, it's part of our values, let's say. No, I think that in this regarding the employees, I think that is what I wanted to highlight. I won't be talking about all the other measurements that we have regarding employees. I can share it with you later, but I think that it's very good to see how much coherent Suzano has been regarding its values, its vision, and what we are doing right now.
Yeah, Malu, I think that's really important when you're talking about your values and how the work that you're doing is helping to solidify a new culture within the company. When your employees were talking about what the pride that they have with Suzano right now during the pandemic and how you're handling everything. So one question really quickly, just want to make sure that people know that, yes, while you are a new company, you are also a company with legacy companies that go back a long, long time. So the actual predecessor Suzano company has been in business since what year?
Suzano is almost 100 years old.
Right. That,
The company that was bought by Suzano, it had around 10 years old, but used to belong to a group that's also about 100 years old.
yeah. So I just thank you. I just want to make sure we got that point across, that when we're talking about Suzano being a new company, it's actually two companies coming together that actually have rich heritage on their own, which I think is very evident, at least from what I have seen and experienced with you on the sustainability aspect. So, Sandro, can you tell us how the pandemic has been affecting AT&T and impacting your employees?
Well, yeah, absolutely, Jeff. I'll be brief for the sake of time, and in multiple ways. I mean, very much like Malu described of Suzano, we and many other companies, I believe, we have all the same similar pattern of really addressing, first of all, the needs of our clients, second of all, the needs of our people, and then third of all, the needs of our communities that surround us, including the providers, where a company like ours and like Suzano's, we have an ecosystem that reaches way beyond. And the matter of SMEs also, right? The small and medium enterprises is important. Now, first of all is the emotional component of it, right? I mean, you think about this. In our case, we have about over 35,000 employees throughout the region. And one of the first things that we did as an organization is really to try to address those employees that really could do everything from home. As the pandemic started hitting the United States and Europe, the first thing was, okay, yeah, let's really make sure that the employees are safe. And that's really easier said than done, considering that you are a service company that has millions and millions, tens of millions of subscribers and clients throughout the region, because your call centers are the first ones that are affected immediately. We have made a logistical move to really shift the majority of our call center operators to work from home. And that was a phenomenal operational move that the company did in order to really protect them, protect their families, and also consequently, much like Suzano and Malu described, our Great Place to Work surveys and our ENPS went through the roof, mainly because of that. But being a company as we are, I mean, it's just, the emotional component of it it needs to be addressed here as well. And we are in a place with uncharted waters. I don't care how well you think you plan, how well you think you know what you're doing, how well you think that, your programs adapt or are going to be useful for this. I mean, that is not the case. I mean, these are uncharted waters for everybody, whether you're a government administrator or a private institute. You are in uncharted waters, and you have to adapt and adapt quickly. And I think that part of it has caused a lot of anxiety, is really how do you move that anxiety and change that energy from fear and nervousness to productivity, right? And just to keep moving on. This has been a challenge for not just for us, but many companies. But I think the challenge also brings the opportunity to come up and rise to the expectation of the level the clients need. In our case specifically, if you think about everything that we do telecommunications and broadcast. So this is also considered an essential, whether you're talking about the mobility services in Puerto Rico or Mexico, or the satellite services in Brazil and Argentina and Colombia. People needed information, and they needed it fast, and they needed to really be connected to it. The levels of media and of telecoms and entertainment that people started connecting to were, think about our society, right, Jeff? I mean, we're already a high consuming telecom and information and media society, but it just went through the roof after this. So all of our systems were tested. And all of our people were tested, and not just people who are servicing the clients, but people actually in the field to make sure all the technical assistance of this. So I think the great merit of it all was really to remain just humble. We're still learning the lessons here. We're still trying to address what is the best way to tackle about this. We think this is going to be a medium to long-term scenario. It is definitely not something that I agree with Malu on this. I mean, a lot of the exposure of some of the difficulties and the challenges of the administrations in Latin America are being tested right now like never before. But, the private sector is rising to the challenge, but it's also going to be interesting to see how, like in cooperation, thinking about the SDGs, right? SDG number 17, right? Partnerships for the goals. this is a time now where companies really need to come together, and they have been showing great movement individually, but they have also been showing great, partnership work as collaborators in this process as well. And obviously, we have examples of this. I don't want to take time on that to address that, but just that's how we have been experiencing this from our end, Jeff.
Jeff?
Yeah. Go ahead, Malu.
May I just make a small comment?
Please do.
Jeff, is something that Sandro said that I agree very much, and I think that it will have a huge impact on every company culture or way of doing things. I mean, the pandemic, it arrived very soon. We didn't have the time to go through all those planning process, right, Sandro, that we usually go through when we have to make a big investment or something that can have a big reputational impact. So everything has to be done very quickly because the scenario changed from day to day. We are in a lot of different cities here, small cities in Brazil. So in 3 days, the scenario changed 100%. And I think this showed to us that we can really be much more quickly in our decisions, that we can do things on a very cohesive way, let's say, and together with other partners, and very fast, and not going anymore through those partnerships that take months for us to put in place, to go through all the legal, all the communication, reputational schemes. We can do good things at the same time that we do things on a more simple, maybe an agile way. We have to be responsible. We always will be responsible. But I think that's a learning that nobody can deny within a corporate, within a company. I don't know if Sandra agrees.
No, absolutely, Malo. And I think that's one of the things. I'm sorry, Jeff, for cutting you off here, but I think that's the point, right? This conversation. And
absolutely.
And exactly what Malu said. I mean, this is breaking down. If you're a corporation right now in operation, I mean, think about just as you're a corporation individually, whether you're going through a M&E, a merger like Suzano, right, or this conglomeration, or whether you've been around for hundreds of years, like it's the case of the parent company of Suzano and our own, right? This is the time to break down silos internally. And they're just being absolutely, I mean, they should be absolutely destroyed. Those companies that are not effectively and actively breaking down those silos internally to operate more efficiently and also help more efficiently, they're missing an opportunity. And that also with the industry, with other partners and competitors, mind you. This is a moment that like we've never seen before in the case of Brazil, right? You see competitors coming together, industries coming together saying, go ahead, let's work together on this. So this is a time, and that is one of the highest silver linings, going back to your point in the beginning of the call. So I do agree with Malu. I mean, this is a time to take advantage of this and break down silos. One of the main objectives that you should have, because it's changing. The seas are moving and they're moving quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And whoever said at one point, don't waste a good crisis is so true, because we do have such an amazing opportunity while we're going through a lot of horrible things. But you're right, barriers are coming down. There's much more willingness to try new things. So, Sandro, talk a little bit more about that. How are companies stepping up to help? Where are you seeing collaborations? How are companies using their philanthropy and other means and their core competencies around the pandemic and the economic fallout that we're seeing?
Yeah, no, I think that like companies, especially if you think about in our CSR industry, and I conveyed this in the call earlier we had in the week, our practice as a CSR practice is being tested, Jeff. I mean, this is, if you think about how young our practice is, and I conveyed to you that I talk with my superiors that I feel like, those generals that were preparing for D-Day in World War II and saying, what, we're going up against a really fierce competitor, an opponent that outnumbers us and outguns us, but we absolutely cannot fail. That's how I feel our CSR practice was tested in this time, and it's still being tested. Because mind you, the battle is not over. The war against this is not over. And that's when you search for allies. In the case of the industries, like some of the industries like ours, when they came together to talk about education. Malu conveyed that earlier, right? The point where education is being tested. She talked about specifically in Brazil in the public sector and distance learning and digital learning. But that's not just in Brazil. That's in Argentina. That's Mexico. Even here in the United States, right? It's the same dialogues, and companies are coming together to try to address this, and they're really extending their dialogues and really joining forces and resources how they can do better. I can give an example of our own with our program Escuela Plus that we had to open up literally. I mean, we were servicing 10,000 schools in the region, and from day to night, we had to open our service to over 7 million homes in Latin America. And we could not do that without the help of partners and collaborators, those partners that work with us and provide their rights, like Disney, National Geographic, Discovery. They came on board and they said, you know what, we're with you. We'll do this together with you, and that we have been doing that and extending that window of rights, for their content, educational content to reach, the millions of homes that became homeschooling in terms of, reaching, distance locations for PPE materials, or medical equipment. Companies are coming together to work, to donate, to work with the Red Cross, to work with other companies together to make sure they're like in the distance locations of these massive territories. I mean, think of Brazil, think of Mexico, Argentina. These are continental countries, right? They're very big. There's no way to accomplish this and to do this together if it's not through the collaboration of the private sector together. And I think that like the relationship with a lot of the NGOs, there's a lot of NGOs, a lot of foundations that have found that renewed need to find a new way and speed to work with the private sector to be able to address this. So all these changes are coming together, and this collaboration, I think, is going to set a new tone for our CSR industry for the years to come. That is just my personal, not just opinion, but my hope as well.
Well, let's say a hope, and let's say it's a hope turning into reality. So, which I think is great. So, Malu, you had talked about, kind of on the same vein about you've never seen such an outpouring of company support within Brazil. Part of that was funding, but how are you seeing that turn into collaboration and going past either the competitive nature of things or just companies that might not have considered working together around an issue previously doing so today?
Well, first, I agree with everything Sandro said about what's happening, the collaboration that's going on. And you have just touched in one of my biggest concerns, Jeff. We have been partnering with our competitors. For instance, we are together with some competitors and other companies from other sectors. We are helping the only one big Brazilian company that produces ventilators. So we are together helping them to come from something around 300 ventilators per month to 6,000 in 3 months. But it is possible only because we are together and we have different competences that we are adding to this company. I think that what will make us to still working together is that everybody realizes that we are under the same storm and we better put some good boats on the ocean. If not, it will reach back all of us. As I said, we are essential business during this crisis, and our employees, they have to be safe, they have to be okay to go to work every day. If I have a municipality, a small town that's not working well, does not understand the people, this local society does not understand how important it is to keep distance one from everybody, well, I will have a problem in my company. It's not about the problem in the local town. The local town has a huge impact in my business, and my business has an impact in the local town, in the small town. So I think the interdependency became clear now. The systemic that we talk a lot for years, it became clear now. And not only talking about Brazil, but talking from a global perspective. No, I think that will impact the way that the relationship between countries, between companies, between cities, governments will be from now on if we pay attention, if we don't forget what we have been learning in the last 150 days.
I think that interdependency. Oh, yeah, jump in.
Yeah, no, let me just add something there to Malu, because she's absolutely 100% correct. But Malu, you'll probably have testament to this as well. There's another component of it different. In the US and Europe, people had a level of expectation about private sector, activation in times like this, different than in Latin America. That has changed. In all of our research, what we have seen as well, Jeff and Malu, you can comment on this as well, is that now that people are looking at it with a totally different lens. They're seeing the value of the private sector being very active in this time, saying, they need to act. And the population, which at one point or another were a little bit hesitant to say, the public is public, the private is private. I say, no, the private needs to act there because we need them to activate, their goods, their services, their materials, their supply channels. They need to activate. So the population itself is also expecting this from us at this time, like never before in Latin America, like never before.
I agree. It's really true. I fully agree.
Yeah, I think that whole interdependency that you were talking about, really those symbiotic relationships around the world, whether it's around one of your mills in the towns, or Sandro, what you were talking about with, what you need to do working with providing content, and obviously the connectivity in order to do that is everybody working together, and supply chains. I don't think a lot of people necessarily used to think much about supply chains, but now is something that is top of mind. I mean, when I look at the Suzano business and pulp, the shortage of paper towels and toilet paper, was just something that was headlines in the newspapers, and something you would never normally see in the newspapers. So that's where I think, too, businesses that you might not have thought about have really gone to the forefront. So this is all really a good conversation, and I think what I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about is some of the initiatives that your own company is doing. Malu, you had introduced me last year to Ecofutura Institute, which Suzano, the legacy Suzano company, has started, and the work you do around libraries, reading, and literacy. And I'm just curious, during the pandemic, how that work has pivoted, knowing how much education is important to you. What is Ecofutura doing, and how are you working with them closer to better meet the needs of the communities that you work in?
Well, we have, as every company, our 2020 plan. Everything was ready to be put on the road. And then suddenly, our libraries, for instance, they all have to become virtual. The kids they are not allowed to go to school. So this is a project that was already in our list, but it has to be really speed up so that we could help the children having access to books. We also have a program that goes beyond the library. We invest a lot in the development of the education team of the municipality and all the people in charge of the schools. And we have to forget what we had planned, and we spend a lot of time helping them to set the strategy, because each small town has different difficulties, and we have to helping them to set how we are going to be in touch with the kids. Okay, they don't have Wi-Fi, they don't have computers, so let's print it here, but who is going to distribute? Well, so we are really very close to the education team of the municipalities that are very critical for us, helping them to set the strategy and to go through the pandemic until, the moment that they can come back to more regular, normal life. So all the other programs that we have, income generation, for instance, cloth masks was a need. We need to provide masks to the family of our employees, but we didn't to make it, okay, let's buy it. No, how can it generate income for the groups that are very vulnerable at this time? So we are producing now, actually, we already produced almost 200,000 masks, cloth masks, all being done by the communities that were teach. No, they had never done anything like that before. They were teach on how to do that, and we bought it from them, and we distributed it to the family of our employees, to some communities as well, to the drivers of the trucks that reach our mills. To a lot of people. So we were all the time trying to see how, at this moment, we can find opportunities for people to keep or to even improve their way of lives. We are now going through an open emergency bid in the order of $100,000. We are seeking for projects that will contribute to help to minimize the impact of the pandemic, being from a business perspective, being from a communication, we don't know. But we are already with 100 projects submitted. We have now to go through, we have another 10 days. But so we are trying to stimulate the innovation within the community. At the same time, we are trying to have a communication scheme, let's say, going on from we have very good programs on the income and generation side in very rural areas. Their markets, the restaurants where they sell, the street markets, they were shut down. So they were like, okay, what's going to happen to us? We set a delivery service of organic products that has been a huge success. They are selling even more than before. And we also have some technical assistance being done to traditional communities. The government launched new policies, emergency, let's say, policies, but they don't know how to access it. Sometimes they don't have the necessary documentation. So we are also helping them in this way. We are besides the mask, the hospital mask, we bought something like 1 million hospital masks. We have those ventilators, being the Brazilian company that we are investing, or the ones that we bought. We import some ventilators as well. We are together with other companies building a campaign hospital in the south of Bahia. That's an area that's very, very critical, have very, very few health infrastructure. Those are some of the examples of the things that we are doing now.
Yeah, Malu, I absolutely love what you were doing with what you were talking about is innovation around repurposing of people who are used to doing different jobs and in different roles, and how that's really in a way is helping to foster the economy in those local communities that are having challenges. So I think that's really, really good. Sandro, question for you. You talked about how silos are coming down, but there are still barriers. There are systems and procedures and policies within companies, within local governments, national governments, and obviously as someone whose responsibilities across many countries throughout Latin America. How are you dealing with the barriers that are put in front of you in order to help more people get through this challenging time?
Well, I think that like the main component of this that helps push change and help push these efforts to help is humanity. And I think one of the things that Malu said earlier and alluded to this, I mean, we're in a point in time in history that humanity never became so important. We've been reminded of it after decades and decades of it, right? The interconnectivity and the communication and the velocity and speed of information and the reality of, yes, the pandemic and what's going on, the numbers of cases confirmed, but also the recoveries. I mean, all brings us back to a place that is really, really close to home. And regardless of where you are, you can be in Sao Paulo, you can be in New York City, you can be in LA, you can be in Buenos Aires or Mexico City. The fact of the matter is that, you have something coming close to your door that may affect your life. This is a major instrument that can use to break down barriers, whether you're talking about from a legislative point of view, whether you're talking about from an operational point of view within your own organization, or whether you're talking about even in the industry point of view. Think about this. I mean, Malu alluded to this earlier in the conversation. She was talking about, what's going to happen with the P&L of companies, if I recall correctly. The economic scenario, Jeff, is going to change. We don't know how, right? But it's from everything we're reading from the IMF in the recent weeks, the economic impact in GDP alone, it's going to be well beyond 4 or 5, some even 10% in some countries. That has the impact of being absolutely devastating to some economies unless some of these barriers break down. And I do have that hope that I think that this is going to be used for good. I truly believe that. I know it sounds cliche. It sounds like a poster that you would put, right? But it is absolutely true. I mean, we have been put to the test of our humanity now like not we have been ever in the history of the world, like that we have seen this, that have so many people were so aware of the same problem in every single country, in every single county of state or province around the world at the same time. Some change is going to make down to this. And I'm thinking the humanity component is going to be absolutely essential. Now, those who are within that humanity, and obviously the humanity, I'm talking about those who lead these corporations, they're going to have to think hard about, okay, what is the future and holds, and how are we going to be a player within a player for good? The good thing is Malu iterated to, the services that they're doing in Suzano on this is, our supply chain is an asset, our products and services are an asset for this change. Well, same thing with us, the same thing is okay, well, our networks, my goodness, they're an incredible asset. Our supply chain is an asset, our people, our employees are assets, even to talk about in a different tone of a call center of a person receiving a call from a customer, our products, whether they're postpaid or prepaid, even that from an economic point of view, they become an asset for good and for change. And then the governments and the administrations, they're also relying on this now. Specific case in point, I mean, think about this in education. She was talking about the Eco Futura in our program with Escola Plus is the same thing. We were in our not 2020 plan like Malu, we're in our 2030 plan, right? To reach our goal of schools, our 20 goal of schools. And my goodness, it got shut down to, not a shutdown to a halt, but it got stopped, interrupted, and multiplied overnight. And then the government, some of these administrations says, we need to put our content to the kids who were in our schools yesterday. Can you help us? And some of those things are barriers that need to break down. And what helped break that down is that sense of humanity, saying, what, we need to work together on this. And I know it sounds so cliche and it sounds so romantic, Jeff, but I believe that to the core of my being. Every person who is sitting down, rather than a conference call or in a podcast right now, is thinking, okay, what can I do to help? In some places, they're thinking, what can I do to survive? What can I do to put food on the table? Some medical practitioners are saying, well, how can I save another life? So these are really, really uncharted waters, like I said before. This is a moment to be real. This is a moment to be absolutely thorough in your strategy, in your adaptability, and your flexibility. But the humanity is going to be the component of it that is really going to push forth and break down all those barriers. I truly believe that, Jeff. I truly believe that.
And I truly believe you too, Sandro, because you are probably one of the most authentic people that I know and have been working hard over the years. And I think we're seeing the fruits of the results from your work, not only at AT&T but personally as well. One quick thing, and sadly, unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap up our discussion. But Sandro, from a parting comment to the group, I'm wondering if you would touch a little bit on 2030, because I agree with you. This is something that is certainly top of mind to all of us, and we have not sidetracked it over the past 100 days or so, and it is still extremely important. So would you mention that, and then we'll turn it over to Malou for her parting comment.
Yes, I think my advice would be to anybody listening to the show and to all the colleagues out there, the CSR colleagues out there, is don't get discouraged. If anything, I think this pandemic has accelerated the SDGs and the goals we have for 2030. We're just going to have to rethink about it. We're going to be more motivated about it. Think about all the corporations right now that do have a CSR or environmental sustainability department. I mean, the whole value of ESG has just increased in the last 100 days like never before. Now it's going to be challenged because there's going to be economic challenges, and obviously the P&L is going to be challenged. So this is the moment to really think about, okay, how can I bring that value and accelerate my process, and how I'm going to collaborate to the 2030 goals. Just in education alone, I think we felt initially frightened, to be very honest with you, like, okay, well, all the schools are going to be shut down, everything we were working for the last 14 years. And then we got incredibly motivated because the following day is, okay, wait a minute. This just got multiplied, instead of thousands of schools, to millions and millions of homes. So it's beyond. So you got to be relatively flexible and be ready to accelerate. I believe this is going to be an acceleration component. And my advice to my colleagues out there is just don't be scared, be bold, and be ready to accelerate whatever you're doing, to rethink it and accelerate it. That's it.
I love that. Be bold and let's accelerate. I think that's really important. Okay, Malou, your parting comment to the group.
I think that the SDGs will be listened very differently now. I think I like them very much. They are very good guide to our strategy and actions, but not everybody were paying the right attention to them. And I think that now they are showing that, they are in the right direction. They are calling our attention to what's really necessary. So I can see much more energy being put on it. And energy and also expertise investment. So I can see it's moving now. The companies, the society, looking at it as a good guide where we have to get. I also see Sandro was talking about the CSR teams. Today, I think the CSR team in the company I am working now, it's much bigger than it used to be. Because the level of engagement, and I'm talking from the top to the bottom, the level of engagement is so high, the level of readiness to make something, to help, a neighbor, someone from a community, near community, wherever. So I can see that the awareness is much higher regarding the inequalities. The awareness is much higher regarding climate issues that we have to face because they are here with us. So I think society is much more aware of the situation, is got in touch with the real issues that we can face if we don't take good care of our people, of our planet, and taking care of an economy or moving an economy towards a much fair type of economy, right? So I am always an optimist. I always say that I see the movie, not only the picture. So if I look at the movie, it's a sad move, but it's a move that we can turn into a good, very big, good opportunity for all of us.
Malu, I could not have ended this any better than you did. Thank you so much. This was a terrific conversation. So thank you so much, Malu. Thank you so much, Sandro. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you to our listeners today. Also, please check out part 1 of this series where I had a chance to speak with leaders from the Coca-Cola Company and Discovery Limited on how the crisis is impacting Africa. And for more resources from the conference board on COVID-19, we have a hub. Please visit it at conference-board.org/COVID-19. So thanks again for being with us today. Great conversation on Latin America. Obviously, we were just scratching the surface, but hopefully this gave you some insights to help your own work when we are looking at this important region of the world. Thank you.
This has been ESG News and Views from the Conference Board.